So this is a Kadam, and that meaning is the Kadam tree from where Krishna calls out for his cows, but I'll leave that for Maharaj because he'll give a short talk at the end, which will be infused with bhava, and we'll get the feeling of this place by his mercy. Hare Krishna. And Śrīla Rupa Goswami, who is known as Rupa Manjari. Sri Rupa Manjari is one of the closest and most intimate associates of Srimati Radharani in the spiritual world. But he is also the head of our Sampradaya, in that we are Rupanugas, even though he does Rupa Goswami Pad to his elder brother, Sri Sanatana Goswami, as his spiritual master. We're known as Rupanugas, tracing back to Śrīla Rupa Goswami's indispensable foundational role as the most intimate associate of Srimati Radharani. And there is the manifestation of our acharyas in the spiritual world, in their spiritual forms, and then they also appear in this world. And they have their sadhaka forms, where they show the path of devotional service by following it themselves in practical ways. Although we know of their spiritual positions, we follow their example in this world. As an example, we know from Srinivasacharya's teachings through his song about the six Goswamis. He says, Sankhya Purvakanamagana Tibi Kalavasani Krito. He describes how the Goswamis had very meticulously counted all of their practices. Counting means there's practice. If you don't have counting, how can you practice? How can you know you improved from practicing unless you set a number? And if we find somebody in our midst on the yatra or in a temple and they have a bead bag with no counter beads, we can draw a couple conclusions. One might be that they're CIA, or another might be that they just got there and they're not sure. Others say, oh, I don't need beads, I'm always chanting in my mind. But our acharyas counted, Sankhya Purvaka. There's numerical strength, and it's demonstrative, means visible sadhana that they performed, that we can follow gives us the opportunity to follow in their footsteps. Śrī Caitanya Mahaprabhu, as we talked about this morning, met the brothers, Rupa and Sanatan and Ramakeli, and later, as I also described, Śrīla Rupa Goswami met subsequently with Śrī Caitanya Mahaprabhu at Prayag, where we have the record of Śrī Caitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings. Rupa Goswami sat for some time and listened intently to Śrī Caitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings there at Prayag. Later, as we know from the Antya-lila of the Śrī Caitanya-caritāmṛta, Rupa Goswami came to Jagannath Puri, and we talked about how he wrote a parallel verse to the song that Śrī Caitanya Mahaprabhu was singing at Ratha Yatra, somewhat to the surprise of people in general, because they had no idea what it meant. Only Swarup Damodar and Rupa Goswami did, and Rupa Goswami later wrote about it in the verse that we also sang. In his teachings to Śrīla Rupa Goswami, although we know him to have enumerated the various divisions of rasa, and he has written different rasa shastras, in his teachings to Rupa Goswami, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu began by describing how in human society there are two kinds of living entities, the moving and the non-moving. And there are 8,400,000 species of life Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught him. And of course we hear Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita says, Manushyanam sahasreshu kaśyid yatiti siddhaye yatatamapi siddhanam kaśyam mam beti tattvataha. And Śrī Caitanya Mahaprabhu said that amongst all the species of life, there's very few that are humans. And he said of those who are humans, there are only a segment who are civilized. The standard of civilization is that there's some regulation in life called varnashrama. There's a way that one stays in contact with Krishna through one's vocation and through one's particular ashrama, beginning with brahmachari and then grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyas. And he said amongst those who have some connection with varnashram, there's only a very few that are serious about it and actually follow. And he said amongst those, there are fewer still that understand the purpose of the varnashrama, which is ultimately to come to Krishna. Krishna's the goal of all of the Vedic arrangements, including varnashrama. And among those who know that Krishna is the goal, there are very few that are pure devotees. He quoted Muktanam api siddhanam narayana parayana sudurlabha prashantatma koti shvapi mahamune from Srimad Bhagavatam, which says there are millions and millions of sages. In fact, there's a verse in the purport to that verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam which describes how many sages there are. So many sages, many, many demigods and so forth. But Narayana Parayana, Sudurlabha. It's very rare to find somebody who's a pure devotee of the Lord. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also told Śrīla Rupa Goswami of the nature of the soul. He described Kesha Grashata Bhagasha Sharamsha Shadrishatmaka Jiva Suksma Swarupo Yam Sankatito Hichitkana. He said the living being, the soul, is chitkana, is a particle of consciousness, which is part and parcel of the supreme consciousness, Krishna, who's a person. And as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Mamai Vamsho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana Manak Shastanindrayani Prakriti Stanigarshati, that the living beings are my fragmental parts. Kesha Grashata Bhagasha is a measurement. Sometimes we hear in Bhagavatam about different kinds of measurements, like you drill a pot with a golden drill and then how fast it sinks in the water. Accordingly, you can ascertain certain certain periods of time. And Kesha Gra means if you take a hair and you divide it, Kesha Gra Shata Bhagasha Sharam Shadrishatmaka, that 100 times 100. Take 100, cut it and 100 times and then 100 times again. Chitkana, you get this infinitesimally small particle. He said that's the soul. And then he quoted from the 87th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the personified Vedas. In it, there's a very important verse in which personified Vedas say that although the soul is similar in quality to Krishna, in quantity, he's not the same. Because if he was, then he'd be all-pervading, and he wouldn't be subject to control by the material nature. But because he's not all-pervading, as some philosophers errantly opine, he is subjected to the control of material nature. And as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Daivahi esha gunamayi mama maya turatyaya mamevaye prapachante mayametam tarantite. The soul under the control of the material nature is captive. And because the material nature is stronger than the living being, even though the living being's superior energy, because the material nature is under control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the living entity can't escape unless he surrenders to Krishna. And then Śrī Caitanya Mahaprabhu described to Śrīla Rupa Goswami the soul's sojourn in the material world. He said that the soul, Brahmanda Brahma Tekon Bhagavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prasadi Pai bhakti-latā bij. He wanders. Mahaprabhu had described the soul in a similar teaching to Sanatana Goswami as a log floating on an endless river. And it just goes forever, floating down. But he said sometimes it comes to the shore. Akrura remembered this when he was praying to Krishna coming into Vrindavan. He said, who am I to come to Vrindavan to meet Krishna and Balaram and pick them up in this chariot? He said, well, every log has its day. Somehow or other it comes onto the shore and is saved. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu marked this as the momentous time in the life of the jiva. Of course, the jiva is eternal, but in time, it's described, or Srila Prabhupada describes, that since we've been here since a time immemorial, you can't trace it out. And he recommends you not try either. It's a fool's errand. But when one becomes fortunate somehow or other, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu described the fortune of the soul as being like the poor man who's suffering because he has no prospect in life and no money. And then he meets a great astrologer, and the astrologer does his chart to try to cheer him up, hopefully, and then discovers that he's not actually poor. He says, you're not poor. Your father was the most wealthy person in the whole country. What's more, when he passed, he left you his treasure. And I know right where it is from looking at your chart. Good luck finding an astrologer like that nowadays. And he told him exactly where to dig for it and so forth. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu brought up that it only takes that information to awaken the good fortune in the heart of the living entity to realize his good fortune. Just, you're not part of this world. Asango hyayam purushaha. You had never ever had anything to do with the material world. You're part of Krishna. And what's more, he said that you're an eternal servant of Krishna. And then he said that the devotee is the only one amidst the multitudes in the world. Everyone's trying some way to become satisfied. But he said that bhukti mukti siddhikami sakali ashanta. Everyone's ashanta. They're not peaceful. You know, shanti, shanti, shanti. They're ashanti, ashanti, ashanti. There's never any peace except for the devotee, because the devotee surrendered to Krishna. And once one comes in contact with Krishna through Guru, the devotees wander the world. 3 kinds of gurus that are Vartmana Pradakshika Guru, who shows one the path. There's the Shiksha Guru, who gives one encouragement and saying, okay, little jiva, you're not part of the world. Guess what? You're lucky. You're a lottery winner. We know right where your treasure's buried. You can get it. And then there's a Diksha Guru who gives the mantra and says you can start chanting this, and the Shiksha Guru can help inform that devotee how to chant the mantra properly. And in such a way, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that the jiva becomes fortunate, bhagyavan. After wandering from one brahmanda to another, he finally comes to his good fortune and is able to take up devotional service. And Śrīla Rupa Goswami, Śrī Caitanya Mahaprabhu, instructed Rupa Goswami to assist in broadcasting this information to the world. And according to historical records, this Terkadamba is one of the places where Śrīla Rupa Goswami came to do his bhajan, and also as part of his bhajan, as ordered by Śrī Caitanya Mahaprabhu, he wrote many books. Very likely he wrote the Śrī Upadeshamrita here, one that we have in stock in various languages, and which we can distribute to others who can then connect to the very clear, succinct knowledge that Śrī Caitanya Mahaprabhu gave to Śrīla Rupa Goswami. And we can give it to people from various countries around the world who can then take advantage of it and come into the association of the devotees. So coming to Terkadamba, I always think of the times when we meet people in far-flung places and offer them the Śrī Upadeshamrita. And I marvel at how, when I see them walk away with it, how would Śrīla Rupa Goswami respond to the news if we were able to come here and report it to him? When we're doing such service, we can remember that we're serving the great acharyas by taking out what they painstakingly wrote down with very specific intention of giving an opportunity to others to follow the path that Śrī Caitanya Mahaprabhu taught to him. And if we pray for the mercy of Śrīla Rupa Goswami to be effective in representing him in the world by passing on the teachings of Lord Chaitanya as he, Rupa Goswami, passed them on to us, and we can teach by our example and also by distributing the transcendental literatures and holding forth in public assemblies and in appropriate ways giving this information to people so they can understand it and take up the process of devotional service. These are some of the ruminations we can come into when we enter the Terkadamba. And now I'd like for Vishnu Gadaprabhu, if he's willing, to give some thoughts about this place. Let's put that on the other side.
Thank you, Vaisesika Prabhu. I read in our songbook that this is also the place that the gopis were worshipping Bhadrakali, is that right? It says there. Oh. Anyway, I met a Vaishnav sannyasi from the Śrī Sampradaya, and we were discussing some of the philosophy, the Gaudiya Sampradaya, Śrī Sampradaya. So he made this comment, he said, no, there's very few differences. The only big difference between the Śrī Sampradaya and the Gaudiya Sampradaya is in the Gaudiya Sampradaya you worship demigods. And in the Śrī Sampradaya it's not allowed. I said, what do you mean? What do you mean? And then he quoted, he said, so the gopis, they worshipped Katyayani to get Krishna as their husband. Okay, yeah, just in this one instance. And if we look, the commentary by Śrīla Vishwanath Chakravarti Ṭhākura was really, they're worshipping, Yogamaya, whose expansion is Katyayani, because even the Gaudiyas, we don't worship the Sagun Bhaktas, the demigods, but in Yogamaya is arranging things for the pastimes of Krishna, so she's transcendental. So in a similar way, when Lord Chaitanya was going to South India, he went through Sri Vaishnava territory, and he sometimes entered into the temples of the demigods, like at in Madurai and other places. And the Sri Vaishnavas were surprised. What's this, Vaishnava going into the temple of Devi? Of course, he offered obeisances and respect. And guess what he did then? Chant Hare Krishna, Hare Nam Sankirtan. So, Lord Chaitanya offered respects to his devotees. There's nothing wrong with offering respects to his devotees. Lord Krishna offered respect to Sudama Brahmana by washing his feet. But ultimately, he showed the perfect method of worship by chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Yeah. So, sometimes there's a story by Giriraj Maharaj. He wanted to see how Srila Prabhupada interacted with so a group of people invited Srila Prabhupada to a Shiva temple to give a katha. So he was there, he gave his talk on Bhagavad Gita and Krishna's instructions. But then after the talk, they had a ceremony in the back where there was a Shiva Ling. So Giriraj Maharaj wanted to see what Srila Prabhupada would do, because then they had a flower ceremony and they're offering offerings to Shiva Linga. So he was watching carefully what Srila Prabhupada would do in this circumstance. Would he go and offer also to Shiva Linga or what? What do you think? Anybody know this one? So he said he watched carefully. He had the flowers in his hand and everybody was offering to Shiva Linga. And there happened to be a picture of Krishna on the side. So Prabhupada went over and offered the flowers to Krishna. So yes, ordinarily, in Vedic culture, and sometimes by pressure of family or by pressure of some ceremony, people like to worship 5 gods. Panchopashana, what are those? Surya, Ganapati, Shiva, Vishnu, Durga, yeah. So Prabhupada writes in the Caitanya-caritāmṛta that we can also do that worship. How do you do that? The verses are there in the Brahma Samhita, Yat pada pallava yugam vinidhaya kumbhad vande pranama samaye saganadi raja vignan vihantamalamasya jagattayasya govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami yat chakshuresha savitas sakalagrahanam raja samusta suramurtirashesha teja yasyagya brahmati samrita kala chakro govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami Shristi stiti pralaya sadhana shakti reka chayeva yasya bhuvanani bibarti durga ichchanurupamapi yasya chacheshtate sa govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami kshiram yatadadhi vikara vishesha yogat sanjayate nahitata pritagasti heto yakshambutam apitatassamupaiti karyat govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami Deeparcharev hi dashantaram abhyupetya Deepayate vivrittahetu samana dharma Yastadrageva hi cha vishnutaya vibhati Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. So we just did that. We worshiped. Oh, you want to go that one too? Yeah. In case you didn't know. A very, very wonderful experience for me. Just one last thing, my godbrother, Lakshmi Nrsimha Prabhu, he tells this story about how in Prabhupada was indisposed in Vrindavan back in the fall of 1977. And by some arrangement, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, who was Prabhupada's secretary at that time, he said, why don't you do kirtan for Śrīla Prabhupada? Because there were 24-hour kirtan going on in Śrīla Prabhupada's room at that time. So he got the shift from, 12 midnight to 2 o'clock to do kirtan. And by himself, chanting very small little kartals. So he was chanting, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And then he got an idea in his mind. Because at that time, there was a popular chant going around. Brahma bole chat. You've heard this one? Chaturmukhe Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Mahadeva Panchamukhe Rama Rama Hare Hare. So he began chanting that, and he thought that Prabhupada was just completely asleep, And as soon as he started chanting that, immediately Prabhupada told him, stop. Just chant Hare Krishna. That's all. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Nothing else required.
For 3 years, that was our streak. Vishnu-Gada Prabhu and I would accompany Vishnu-Gada Prabhu onto the altar in New York, Shri Radha Govinda. We'd stand behind the deity when the Lord was being bathed, and we'd every day chant the whole Brahma Samhita together. 3-year streak. Hare Krishna. A few more words about the teachings of Śrī Caitanya Mahaprabhu to Śrīla Rupa Goswami. Are you up for it? Yes. And that lends well to being in this place, because if we may observe this tree, is it a tree or a creeper? It's hard to tell. It looks like a creeper because of the way it's climbing. It almost looks like a wisteria because it'll just keep going. And after teaching Śrīla Rupa Goswami about the fortune of a living entity coming in contact with a representative of the Lord, Guru Krishna Prasadi Pai bhakti-latā bija. By Guru one gets Krishna, and because of Krishna one gets Guru. And so what is it that one gets from the Guru? It's the bhakti-latā, which is an instruction with the same mood, the same tone, the same mode in which it was received, that is the mood of pure devotional service, unmotivated, uninterrupted. And it is that vibration that comes from one who's received it from another pure devotee that gets passed along, that is the seed. And that seed, said Chaitanya Mahaprabhu poetically, grows. Now, how does it grow? You have to become a mālī. What's a mālī? A gardener. If you look up in the long Mangalacharana, there are 2 verses there that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spoke about becoming a gardener. It's a marvelous metaphor, as being a gardener is at once painstaking and another, and also it is very rewarding. One sees the miracle of seeds. Everything comes from a seed, including the universe, and devotional service comes from the seed also. But one has to, says Śrī Caitanya-caritāmṛta, become an expert gardener. Okay, sorry. Any inconveniences are regretted. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's advice, mālī hai kareshe bija-aropan, shravana kirtana jale kareshe chan, which means you should become a gardener. Once you receive the seed, you have to take care of it and water it. He said, Tahan vishtarita hoy parikramā pal, ihan mālī sheche nitya shravana jal. Ihan means in this world. You may be here in this world in, let's see, Australia? New Zealand? Nobody from Australia? One from Australia. Now Terkadam, Australia, America, Tennessee, doesn't matter. Ihan means in this world. You may be somewhere, but there you should be a gardener. And Shravanadi Jal, everyone say. Shravana means obviously hearing, and Adi means etc. So Shravanadi and Jal. Jal means water. And what is that? Tanama rupa charitadi sikirtananu smrityo kramena rasana manasi niyoja tishtan vraje tananuragi jananugami kalam nayera kilamiti putesha saram. Rupa Goswami, taking this instruction, said, here's the Upadeshamrita. It's the Upadesh, the nectar of instruction. And now here's the essence of it all. In this one verse, he says that Tanama Rupa Charitadi, there's the word Adi again. Hear, chant, etc., and go on in this way, and water the seed, become a gardener and water it dutifully. And he said, if you water it, it will grow, and it will become luxuriant. What to speak of? He said, then the creeper, we have a little experience with creepers in our home in California, because we have jasmine and we also have wisteria. And the jasmine, if you just leave it, it will take over the whole neighborhood. It maybe even go into the next township. Really. I've seen it go from our yard to the neighbor's yard and then start taking over trees and coming up the side of their house. And then if it goes to the street, it'll go inside a stop sign, go up through the middle, and then cover the whole stop sign. So there's some practical comparisons here that the creeper, Śrī Caitanya-caritāmṛta said, when you water it, it will grow from this world all the way past the coverings of the material of the material world, which are earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego, and each one's 10 times thicker than the other. Keshava, do the math. And then there's the viraja, which is the demarcation between the material and spiritual world. And that creeper is so powerful that it'll go through all those coverings, then past the viraja, it will enter into the spiritual sky. It will go to Goloka Vrindavan, which is at the top of the spiritual world. Goloka Nandini Nijadamni Tale Tatasya Devi Mahesha Haridama Suteshu Teshu Tete Prabhava Nichaya Vihitasjayena Govindamadi Purushamta Mahamajam. You can't go there by SpaceX. It'll never work. It'll crash. But if you go there by Krishna Bhakti, that creeper will grow all the way up, and it will, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told Rupa Goswami, it will entangle itself at the lotus feet of Krishna there. And you'll be living in this world, but you'll have dual citizenship. You'll be in this world, yes, and you can show your passport and say, I'm from Australia. But you'll actually be living in the spiritual world. He said, this is possible for those who get the Krishna Bhakti seed, and they're vigilant gardeners. What is the other part of gardening besides watering? You have to weed. So he said, Vaishnava parari hoy uti hati mata upari vachindre shuki jaya pata. He said, be careful as a gardener not to smash your garden. He said you should watch out for what he called the hati mata. That's the mad elephant offense. Elephants in general don't know their own strength, or maybe they do. Either way, they can take a car and flip it over when they get a little angry. Have you ever seen that? If you haven't seen it, you haven't watched YouTube. So when an elephant comes into a garden, even if he's not mad, he'll wreck it. Because all he has to do is hang around and ruin everything that you planted. What to speak of he gets mad. And there are cases where elephants get mad and they get loose and they'll go tear up the whole town, and it'll take an army to follow them and finally stop the rampage. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told Rupa Goswami, Vaishnava parade, hoy, uti hati mata. While you're growing your garden, if you make Vaishnava parada, then it's like inviting a mad elephant to come in your garden, and shuki jaya pata. Then the creeper will be smashed and it will dry up. So he said, be vigilant and practicing devotional service to make sure that you don't offend Vaishnavas. Be very careful of that. And then weeding. One has to be vigilant because when little plants come up, when they're brand new, they look like the others. So one has to become expert gardener to know what weeds look like when they come up, under what circumstances, and one has to protect the creeper. Going around on Govardhana parikramā, you'll see very frequently that people try to plant things. And when they're new plants, you'll notice that there's more fence and barbed wire around each plant than there is plant. And it takes years for it to grow up because everybody wants to eat that plant. The monkeys will come and break it just for fun. The cows will eat it. Others will deface it one way or another. So we can remember that we're under assault from all different directions, and we have to be very careful to protect the creeper. And then we also, as Śrīla Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Ṭhākura elaborately explains in the Śrī Caitanya-caritāmṛta, in the matter of the cleansing in the Guṇḍicā Mandira, that there are categories of offenses that one might not even have thought were an offense, that one should catalog and become aware of in order to be an expert mālī, an expert gardener. And he names the various ways that one can impede the growth of the bhakti-latā. It's worth studying again and again and looking at very carefully. And now let's see if there's any reflections or questions. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
You said that the soul under material nature is captive, and unless one surrenders to Krishna, that they'll be trapped. How would you define surrender and practical ways to do that?
Surrender is given practical shape in a verse which describes Sharanagati, which is called the sixfold path of taking shelter of Krishna. And number one is accepting those things which are favorable for devotional service. So get a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle, and on one side write things favorable for my devotional service. Because number two is to eschew those things that are unfavorable for one's devotional service. And the next is that one should develop an awareness that Krishna is our protector and our maintainer. Prahlad Maharaj said, Balasya neha sharanam pitaro nashinga nartasya chagana mudanvati majito no. taptasya tat pratibidirya yahanjasheshtas tavad bibo tanubitam tvadupekshitanam. He said, a boat on water cannot save a drowning man. Parents cannot protect their children, although you can try to save a drowning man on the ocean. You should, if you have a boat. And parents should take care of their kids. And a doctor, if you go to a doctor, doctors cover your ears. If you say to the doctor, can you absolutely guarantee you're going to cure me? And they say, no, and we also can't guarantee that we're not going to kill you. Accidentally, I know, because I had some work done on my knee once, and they made me sign triplicates, quadruplicates, saying, don't mind if we kill you. And I was like, this is great, thanks. So Prahlāda said, be aware that unless the Lord sanctions it, we can't be protected. Like Prahlāda Maharaj always took shelter of Lord Nrsingadev, and he knew he was his protector and maintainer. We should know that Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam Eko Bahunam Yoveditati Kaman. Krishna's the feeder, we're the fed. We really can't help anyone. He's the Suhrit, the best friend of everyone. And we're everyone, every living being in the world is at his mercy. So protector, maintainer. Then one should also, as part of Sharanagati, number 5 is, one should cultivate humility. In the Bhakti-latā, Narada Muni calls this dainya. Dainya means extreme humility. It doesn't mean that you become a doormat for every bully in the world. That's not the intention. The point is to become very much aware that give credit where credit is due, and all credit goes to Krishna. I'm just an instrument. And finally, number 6 is consider everything in the universe as paraphernalia to be used in Krishna's service, including one's body, mind, words, family, car, what else you have? Computer, your money. Ooh, that's sensitive. Everything. This is called Atma Nivedana. And in Atma Nivedana, there's a sense that Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his song, Manasa Deho Geho Yo Kichumo Arpiluntu Hapade Nanda Kishore. He's expressing through his songs. In fact, there's the book called the Sharanagati. And in each section, there's a song that relates to each one of these processes of surrender. And in that song, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying, my body, my home, my family. And then he says something astounding, which no one in the world would ever think of. He said, even myself doesn't belong to me. I give it to you. That's Atma Nivedana. I don't even own myself. I belong to you. And this is something Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita, where he says, Nirmana mohajita sangatosha. And nirman means give up the false ego that you're your own man. Nirman, don't be the man. Nirman, be Krishna's. And it's very sweet, because once you give yourself to Krishna, then when people come trying to collect their pound of flesh, you just say, sorry, there's nothing left. It all belongs to Krishna. It works in tax law too. If you just give everything away to charity, it's called a charitable remainder trust you can do. You give everything to charity, and so you don't actually have it anymore. It's given to a charity. You can live off in an annuity for a while. And then there's no tax on it because it belongs to the charity. Or big corporations, or people who have corporations, they don't pay tax either because they say, well, it's not mine. It belongs to the corporation. So the whole universe is a corporation, and when we just say, no, I don't have anything, it doesn't belong to me, it belongs to Krishna, then it's such relief. That's in that verse, Bhukti Mukti Shuddhi Karmi Sakali Ashante. How does it start? Krishna Bhakta Ataiva Sakali Krishna Bhakti Nishkam Ataiva Shanta. Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami Sakali Ashanta. Because the devotee has done this Sharanagati, it's peaceful. There's no more anxiety. That's the constitutional position of happiness. Hare Krishna.